The training arena smelled like burnt metal and regret. Instructor Vek'thara stood in the center of the combat ring, all 7 feet of scaled muscle and military precision, watching the latest batch of recruits file in. His 4 eyes tracked each movement with the kind of boredom that came from 200 years of watching soft-bodied species try and fail to meet Galactic Defense Force standards. "Listen up," his voice boomed across the titanium floors. "I have trained warriors from 43 different species, Threxians who could crush stone with their bare hands, Threxian shock troops who regenerated limbs in combat, mechanical constructs from the Forge worlds who never slept, never tired, never quit." He paused, letting his gaze sweep across the nervous faces before him, mostly Centaurian cadets, a few Dravok heavy worlders, some methane breathers in environmental suits, and... His eyes stopped. Way in the back, barely visible behind a towering Dravok, stood a human, a times-human asterisk. Vek'thara felt his 3rd stomach clench. He had heard the rumors, of course. Everyone had. The Galactic Council had finally approved Earth's petition to join the GDF after decades of political maneuvering. But seeing one in person, actually standing in his arena, made his scales itch with second-hand embarrassment. She was tiny, maybe 5.5 feet tall, and that was being generous. Thin limbs, soft skin, no natural armor, no venom sacs, no enhanced musculature. Her species didn't even have a proper tail for balance. Brown hair pulled back in something she probably thought looked military. Dark eyes that watched him with, was that confidence? Oh, this was going to be painful. "You," Vek'thara pointed one clawed finger directly at her. "Human, step forward." The other recruits parted like water around a stone. She walked to the center of the ring without hesitation, her spine straight, her expression neutral. Up close, she looked even more fragile. He could probably snap her in half with one hand. "Actually, scratch that. 1 times finger asterisk. State your name for the record," he said, already mentally composing the incident report he would file when she inevitably broke something during basic exercises. "Recruit Mira Kane, sir. Earth, Sol System, Orion Arm." Her voice was steady. He would give her that much, foolishly steady. "Kane." He rolled the name around his mouth like a piece of tough meat. "Tell me, Kane, what possessed your planet to send this?" He gestured vaguely at her entire body, to a military training facility designed for actual warriors. A few snickers rippled through the assembled recruits. The Dravoks found it particularly amusing, their deep rumbling laughter echoing off the walls. Mira Kane did not blink. "My planet sent me because I qualified, sir. Same as everyone else here." "Qualified?" Vek'thara let out a hiss that might have been laughter. "You passed some tests on your backward little world and think that makes you ready for this? Look around you, Kane. See that Threxian over there? She could bench press a transport shuttle. That Threxian? His people invented half the combat techniques we teach here. And you." He leaned down, bringing his massive head level with hers. "You look like you would shatter if I breathed on you too hard." "Permission to speak freely, sir?" "Denied." He straightened up. "I do not need to hear whatever delusional speech your recruitment officer filled your head with. I need to see if you can survive basic combat training without me having to ship you home in a medical pod, or worse, a box." He turned to address the full group. "First exercise is simple. Basic strikes. You will demonstrate your species' standard combat techniques against the practice dummy." He gestured to a reinforced training unit at the edge of the ring, designed to withstand punishment from the galaxy's toughest soldiers. One by one, the recruits stepped up. The Threxian delivered, a punch that actually dented the reinforced plating. The Threxian strike was so fast it created a sonic boom in the enclosed space. Even the smallest Centaurian managed to rattle the dummy's internal gyros with a well-placed kick. "Kane, your turn." She approached the dummy with measured steps. Vek'thara crossed his arms, already wincing in anticipation. This was going to be like watching a baby Fleshwing try to fight a battlecruiser. Mira planted her feet, drew back her right leg, and kicked. The impact made a sound like someone dropping a wet towel on metal. The dummy did not move, did not shake, did not even acknowledge that it had been touched. Complete silence filled the arena. Then someone laughed, then another. Within seconds, the entire recruit group was howling with amusement. Even the stoic Threxians were making their species equivalent of chuckling sounds, a sort of clicking whistle that sounded like malfunctioning machinery. Vek'thara held up one hand for silence. When the laughter died down, he approached Mira, who stood exactly where she had been, her expression unreadable. "That," he said slowly, "was the single most pathetic display of combat technique I have witnessed in my entire career. My hatchlings kick harder than that when they are having tantrums about their food portions. Sir, Quiet." He circled her like a predator sizing up prey. "I have seen exactly 3 humans in my lifetime before today. One was a diplomat who fainted during a standard station pressure adjustment. Another was a trader who required 4 different medications just to survive in normal galactic environmental conditions. The third was a scientist who wore protective gear in situations the rest of us considered room temperature." He stopped directly in front of her. "Your species is weak, Kane. Fragile. Evolution happened to you on a planet with barely 1 standard gravity, with a single sun providing barely adequate radiation, with prey animals that could not fight back effectively. You are the product of an easy world, and it shows in every soft muscle and thin bone of your inadequate frame." Mira's jaw tightened. There, finally a crack in that ridiculous composure. "You want to know the real tragedy?" Vek'thara continued, warming to his subject. "Your people actually believe you belong out here. You think because you invented some primitive rockets and stumbled your way to faster-than-light travel, that you are ready to stand alongside species who have been fighting wars since before your planet cooled from its formation. It would be funny if it was not so sad. Sir, request permission to..." "To what? Cry? Go home?" "I would approve both, honestly. Save us all the time and medical expenses." Her hands clenched into fists. Her breathing changed, becoming deeper, slower. Vek'thara recognized the signs of barely controlled anger. "Good. Let her feel something other than misplaced confidence. You get one more chance," he said. "One more kick. Show me that Earth sent someone who can at least pretend to be a soldier. Because right now, you are embarrassing your entire planet." The arena had gone quiet again. Every recruit watched with the kind of fascination usually reserved for impending disasters. This was better than entertainment feeds. This was a live demonstration of evolutionary inadequacy. Mira stepped back from the dummy. She rolled her shoulders, an oddly casual gesture that seemed out of place given the situation. Then she looked directly at Vek'thara with those dark eyes, and for just a moment he saw something in them that made his warrior instincts whisper a warning. "Nah, probably just the overhead lights reflecting weird." "Sir," she said quietly, "you should probably step back." "Why? Afraid you will miss the dummy and hurt yourself on the floor." "Trust me, Kane, at your power level, the only thing in danger here is your pride, and that ship already sailed, crashed, and sank to the bottom of whatever ocean your world." She moved. Not fast by Threxian standards, not particularly graceful by Centaurian measures. But there was something in the movement, something in the way she pivoted her hips and drove her leg forward and connected with the dummy's center mass, that made Vek'thara's tactical combat computer scream warnings half a second too late. The sound was nothing like the wet towel slap from before. This sound was a crack, sharp, final. The kind of noise that solid materials make right before they remember they are not supposed to be solid anymore. The dummy, all 3,000 pounds of reinforced titanium alloy and impact-resistant polymers, did 3 things in rapid succession. First, it buckled inward where her foot connected, the metal actually deforming around the strike point. Second, it lifted off its magnetic moorings, those supposedly unbreakable anchors that could hold steady through orbital bombardment simulations. Third, it flew backward like it had been hit by an anti-vehicle weapon, tumbling end over end until it crashed into the far wall with enough force to crack the reinforced concrete. Mira landed softly on both feet, perfectly balanced, and calmly returned to attention stance. Nobody breathed. Nobody moved. Somewhere in the arena's environmental system, a coolant pump continued its rhythmic humming, completely unaware that the laws of physics had just been violated in spectacular fashion. Vek'thara stared at the destroyed dummy, then at the crack in the wall, then at the small, soft, allegedly weak human standing in front of him, like she had just done nothing more remarkable than sneeze. His mouth opened, closed, opened again. "That," he finally managed, "is not possible." Mira tilted her head slightly. "Sir, you told me to show you what I could do. That dummy is rated for Class 7 combat impacts. It has survived training sessions with enhanced Dravok heavy welders. How did you? What did you?" His. Four eyes narrowed. You are using illegal enhancement drugs. Or cybernetic augmentation. That is the only explanation. No, sir. Standard Earth biology. I can submit to any testing you want. One of the Threxian recruits, the same one who had dented the dummy earlier, spoke up in her booming voice. Instructor Vek'thara, respectfully, that should not be possible from a single G-worlder. The force required to achieve that result would need, at minimum, muscles adapted for 3 times, standard gravity, reinforced bone structure, and… I know what it would require. Vek'thara snapped. His scales had started changing color, flushing toward the deep purple that indicated extreme confusion. This was not in any of the briefings. The human species profile clearly stated they were physically inferior to nearly every other spacefaring race. Weak, fragile, soft. That dummy had just experienced the equivalent of being hit by a cargo transport. He approached Mira slowly, studying her with all 4 eyes. She did not look augmented, no visible cybernetics, no telltale signs of chemical enhancement. Just a baseline human who apparently could kick with the force of a small explosive device. Explain, he demanded, now. Sir, humans can access different levels of strength based on circumstances. Under normal conditions, our brains limit muscle usage to prevent self-injury. But we can override those limits when necessary. Adrenaline response, determination, fear, anger, all of these can unlock additional capacity. That is not how biology works. It is how times human times biology works, sir. Vek'thara's combat computer was still processing the force calculations, and the numbers made no sense. He pulled up Earth's profile on his wrist display, scanning through the data. Single G-world, check. Oxygen, nitrogen atmosphere, check. Moderate temperature range, check. Predator species but not apex until recently, check. Wait. He scrolled back. There, buried in the ecological history section, was a detail he had glossed over before. Humans evolved as persistence hunters, not the fastest, not the strongest, but capable of chasing prey to exhaustion over impossible distances. Their bodies regulated temperature through liquid excretion, allowing them to operate in conditions that would shut down other species. They could function on minimal sleep for extended periods. Their pain response was present, but could be consciously suppressed or ignored. And there, in a footnote marked anomalous capability, was a reference to something called hysterical strength, documented cases of humans performing physically impossible feats during extreme stress situations. This is a documented phenomenon? He asked, pointing at the display. Yes, sir, though I was not actually accessing that for the second kick. Then how? You made me angry, sir. The arena remained absolutely silent. Even the environmental systems seemed to have stopped humming out of pure shock. Vek'thara looked at Mira Kane, really looked at her, and felt something he had not experienced in decades of training the galaxy's finest warriors. Uncertainty. The rest of you, he barked at the assembled recruits. Basic conditioning exercises. 500 standard cycles. Move. They scattered like startled flesh wings, grateful to be anywhere except under his attention. Once they were occupied, he gestured for Mira to follow him to the edge of the arena, away from listening ears and recording equipment. Off the record, he said quietly, his voice losing some of its parade ground edge. What are you really capable of? She considered the question. Honestly, sir, I do not know my upper limits. None of us do. That is kind of the point of being human. We surprise ourselves. That is terrifying. Yes, sir. He looked back at the destroyed dummy, at the crack in the wall, at the combat calculations still scrolling across his display. Then he looked at this small, soft creature who had just rewritten everything he thought he knew about Earth's capabilities. You do realize, he said slowly, that I'm going to have to completely restructure your training program. Yes, sir. And that every instructor in this facility is going to want to test you personally to see if that was a fluke. Yes. And that the Galactic Defense Force Command is going to lose their collective minds when they see the footage from today's session. I imagine so. Sir. Vek'thara felt a grin spreading across his face, showing more teeth than was probably friendly. Outstanding. I have been doing this job for 200 years, Kane. It has been boring for at least 150 of them. You just made things interesting again." Mira allowed herself the smallest smile. "Happy to help, sir. Do not get cocky, recruit. Interesting does not mean easy. If anything, I am going to push you twice as hard now. I want to know exactly what your species can do, and the only way to find that out is to test you until something breaks. Looking forward to it, sir." Liar. But his tone held something that might have been respect. "Report to medical for a full scan. I need documentation that you are not enhanced before the review board tries to disqualify you. Then meet me at Training Hall 7 tomorrow at 0600 station time. Wear comfortable clothing you do not mind ruining." "Sir, we are going to find out what happens when a human fights a Threxian in hand-to-hand combat. For science." "You mean for your entertainment, sir?" "That too." As Mira headed toward the exit, Vek'thara pulled up the session recording on his wrist display. He watched the second kick again, frame by frame, studying the biomechanics. The power did not come from muscle mass. It came from leverage, from the efficient transfer of force, from the way humans could throw their entire body weight behind a strike without caring about the damage it might do to themselves. They were not the strongest species, not the fastest, not the most durable, but they were absolutely, certifiably insane, and that might be worth more than all the natural advantages in the galaxy. He sent a coded message to his commanding officer. "Human recruit assessment requires major revision. Previous species profile dangerously incomplete. Request authorization for advanced combat testing and possible reclassification of threat level." The response came back within minutes. Denied. Humans are categorized as low-threat support species. Maintain standard training protocols. Vek'thara looked at the destroyed dummy one more time, then typed a single-word response. "Idiots." Tomorrow was going to be very, very interesting, and possibly very expensive in terms of equipment replacement costs. But right now, watching the other recruits struggle through their conditioning exercises, while sneaking terrified glances at the small human who had just rewritten the arena's safety regulations, Vek'thara felt something he had not experienced in longer than he could remember. Genuine excitement about his job. Maybe these humans were not ready for the galaxy. Maybe, and this was the truly disturbing thought, the galaxy was not ready for them. Either way, training was about to get a whole lot more complicated. Training Hall 7 was not designed for comfort. It was designed for pain, enlightenment through suffering, and the occasional broken bone that built character. Vek'thara arrived early, as always, and spent 20 minutes configuring the arena's gravity plates to cycle between 0.8 and 2.5 standard. If Kane wanted to prove yesterday was not a fluke, she would do it under conditions that would make a Dravok sweat. She walked in at precisely 0600, wearing simple black training gear that looked like it had seen better days. Her hair was tied back again, her expression calm, like she had not just put herself on every senior instructor's watch list across 3 sectors. "On time," Vek'thara observed. "That is a start. You said 0600, sir. Most recruits interpret that as 0605, maybe 0610, if they are feeling bold." He activated the gravity plates. The air shimmered slightly as the field stabilized at 1.2 standard. "Let us see how you handle real training." What followed was 3 hours of systematic brutality disguised as exercise. Vek'thara threw every conditioning drill he knew at her. Sprint circuits that made Olympic runners look lazy, obstacle courses designed for species with twice her limb count, combat scenarios that assumed you had natural armor, plating and backup organs. Mira kept up, not easily. Her breathing grew ragged, sweat soaked through her training gear, and her movements lost some precision as fatigue set in. But she did not quit, did not slow down beyond what the physical limitations demanded. When she stumbled during a balance beam exercise under double gravity, she got back up without being told. "Adequate," Vek'thara grunted after she completed the final drill. "Your endurance is better than expected. Now comes the interesting part." He pressed a control on his wrist display. A panel in the wall slid open, and out stepped something that made Mira's eyes widen slightly. Instructor Qualthos was a Threxian, which meant he looked like 7 feet of whipcord muscle wrapped around a skeleton made from bad intentions. His species had evolved on a high-gravity death world, where everything tried to kill you, and the things that did not try to kill you were poisonous. He moved with the kind of fluid grace that came from never wasting a single motion, ever. Kane, Meet Qualthos. He teaches advanced combat. Qualthos, this is the human I mentioned. The Threxian's mandibles clicked in what might have been amusement. The one who destroyed the dummy? She looks barely capable of destroying a sandwich. That is what I thought too. Vek'thara gestured toward the center mat. Basic sparring. First to 3 solid impacts wins. No lethal techniques, obviously. Qualthos, you are limited to 20% capacity. 20%? Against this? The clicking intensified. I could use 5%. 20, that is an order. They took positions on opposite sides of the mat. Mira adopted a stance that Vek'thara did not recognize from any standard GDF combat manual. Feet shoulder-width apart, hands up but loose, weight centered. It looked almost casual. Qualthos attacked. Even at limited capacity, a Threxian moved fast enough to make optical tracking difficult. One moment he was standing still, the next he was simply there. Inside her guard, one clawed hand driving toward her midsection in a strike that would knock the wind from a Kulvaxian's lungs. Mira was not there anymore. She had twisted sideways, letting the strike pass through empty air so close that it rustled her training gear. Her elbow came up and around in a short, vicious arc that caught Qualthos in the thorax, with a solid thud. The Threxian stumbled back, his mandibles spreading wide in surprise. Point, Vek'thara called. Qualthos leads 0-1. Wait, that was backwards. Sir, Mira said, not taking her eyes off her opponent, I landed that strike. You barely touched him. Solid impact to center mass. Your rules. Vek'thara checked the arena's impact sensors. They confirmed force transfer consistent with... She had actually hit hard enough to qualify. Correction. Kane leads 1-0. Qualthos clicked something that did not translate well, probably because it was Threxian for a word that would make a cargo hauler blush. He came in again, faster this time, a blur of motion that wove through 3 different attack angles in under 2 seconds. Mira blocked the first, redirected the second, and took the third on her forearm with a wince that suggested it hurt considerably. But she turned the defensive position into an offensive one, her legs sweeping low while her body weight shifted in a way that defied Vek'thara's understanding of balance. Qualthos went down. Not hard, not dramatically, but definitely down. 1-1, Vek'thara announced. His scales were doing that purple confusion thing again. The Threxian rose smoothly, his entire posture different now. This was not the casual superiority of a master humoring a student anymore. This was a fighter who had just realized his opponent was actually dangerous. The third exchange lasted maybe 4 seconds. Qualthos came in with a combination technique that had won him 6 sector championships. Mira met it with something that looked improvised, chaotic, wrong by every conventional standard. They broke apart simultaneously. Qualthos had a hand pressed to his side where her knee had connected. Mira was holding her shoulder where his counterstrike had landed. Mutual impact. Vek'thara ruled. 2-2. Next point wins. They circled each other now, both breathing hard. The casual atmosphere had evaporated like water on a plasma coil. This was serious. Qualthos feinted left, went right, spun into a kick that could have caved in a security door. Mira ducked under it, drove forward into his center of gravity, and did something with her hips and shoulders that turned his own momentum against him. The Threxian flight instructor, master combatant, veteran of 40 campaigns, found himself airborne for approximately half a second before the mat introduced itself to his back with authority. Mira's hand was at his throat, not quite touching. The universal signal for killing blow available but not taken. Complete silence. Qualthos stared up at her with all 6 eyes wide. What manner of combat style was that? Mixed martial arts, some boxing, bit of Muay Thai, and whatever works. She offered him a hand up, which he took automatically. My planet has about 200 different fighting systems. We got bored and combined. You combined them. Seemed efficient. Vek'thara was running the combat analysis through his computer. According to the biometric scanners, Mira's heart rate had peaked at 190 beats per minute during the fight. Her lactic acid buildup suggested muscle tissue operating near failure. Her pain receptors were screaming warnings about the impacts she had taken. She had fought through all of it like the signals were just background noise. Qualthos, he said slowly, what percentage capacity did you actually use toward the end? The Threxian's mandibles clicked sheepishly. Approximately 60%, instructor. You were ordered to use 20. She was winning. So you tripled your output and still lost? Yes. Vek'thara looked at Mira, who was trying very hard not to smile and failing slightly. Kane, you just defeated a Threxian combat instructor in hand-to-hand sparring. Yes, sir. Do you understand how statistically improbable that is? I understand it is very improbable, sir. Improbable like winning the sector lottery while being struck by lightning, improbable. Improbable like every atom in your body simultaneously quantum tunneling through a wall, improbable. Understood, sir. He pulled up his wrist display and started typing. I am filing a formal request to GDF Command for human combat capability reassessment. This needs to go up the chain before someone gets killed. Sir, I did not kill anyone. Not yet. But give it time. He sent the report, flagged urgent, with full biometric data attached. You are dismissed. Get that shoulder looked at in medical. And Kane? Yes, sir? Tomorrow 0600, same location. Bring whatever you think passes for protective gear on your planet. We are testing your durability next. She saluted, winced because her shoulder definitely hurt, and headed for the exit. Kalthos watched her go, then turned to Vek'thara. I have fought in 3 wars and trained for 70 years. That human should not have been able to touch me. I know. Her species profile says they are fragile, weak, support class at best. I know. The profile is wrong. Very wrong. Vek'thara pulled up Earth's file again, staring at the inadequate data like it had personally offended him. Question is, how wrong? What else can they do that we do not know about? The response from GDF Command came back 6 hours later. Vek'thara read it twice, certain he had misunderstood. Request denied. Human physiology well documented. Outlier performance attributed to individual variation. Maintain standard protocols. Do not waste command resources on statistical anomalies. He typed back. This is not an anomaly. This is a systematic underestimation of an entire species' combat potential. Request denied. Case closed. Vek'thara deleted several response drafts that would have gotten him court-martialed, then settled on acknowledged. Fine. If command wanted to stick their heads in the sand, that was their problem. He would continue training Kane to standard, which meant pushing her until something actually broke, or until she proved the galaxy's understanding of human limitations was catastrophically incomplete. Either way, it would be educational. Over the next 3 weeks, Mira Kane became a legend in the training facility. Not the good kind of legend, like war heroes or celebrated strategists, the uncomfortable kind, like ghost stories or unexplained phenomena that made instructors question their career choices. She completed obstacle courses designed for Dravok heavy worlders, survived environmental training in atmospheres that should have melted her lungs, outperformed Centaurian cadets in marksmanship despite having only 2 eyes instead of 4, kept pace with enhanced soldiers during forced marches that left actual machines needing maintenance. The other recruits stopped laughing, started avoiding her in the mess hall, whispered when she passed, the kind of nervous whispers usually reserved for discussing predators behind armored glass. Vek'thara documented everything, sent weekly reports to command, each more detailed than the last, got back variations of the same response, statistical anomaly, individual variation, maintained standard protocols. Then came week 4. The training exercise was straightforward. Urban combat simulation, full gear, live ammunition with reduced lethality ratings, 4-person teams competing for objectives across a mock city environment. Mira had been assigned to a team with 2 Centaurians and a Kulvaxian, facing off against Kalthos, leading a squad of veteran trainees. Vek'thara observed from the control room, monitoring vital signs and tactical positioning. The simulation started clean. Both teams advanced carefully, using proper cover, maintaining communication discipline. Then Kalthos's team triggered the ambush scenario. Mira's team took fire from 3 directions. The Centaurians went down immediately, their shields overwhelmed by concentrated plasma bursts. The Kulvaxian tried to return fire and caught a training round directly to her center mass, hard enough to activate her suit's safety lockout. Mira was alone, pinned down behind a fabricated wall section, while 4 veteran shooters poured suppression fire into her position. Standard protocol said surrender at this point. Take the loss, learn from it, move on. Mira did not surrender. She went over the wall, not around, not through, over, in a running leap that should not have cleared the height, while firing her weapon one-handed with accuracy that made the targeting computer question its programming. She landed in the middle of Qualthos's formation and just moved. The combat footage looked like someone had accidentally fast-forwarded through a dance performance. She was here, then there, then somehow behind the shooter who had been in front of her, her movements flowing between targets like water finding cracks in stone. Training rounds snapped out with metronomic precision. 4 shots, 4 hits, 4 opponents suddenly locked out of their armor systems. Qualthos, to his credit, adapted instantly, dropped his weapon, closed to melee range where his natural advantages should have dominated. Mira met him empty-handed. They fought for maybe 10 seconds. It felt longer, watching from the control room. Every exchange a potential lethal outcome if these had been real weapons, real conditions, real war. She won by doing something Vek'thara had never seen in 2 centuries of combat. She grabbed Qualthos's arm mid-strike, used his own kinetic energy against him, and somehow turned that into leverage that put him face first into the fabricated pavement hard enough to crack the composite material. Her training knife appeared at the base of his skull. "Yield," she said quietly. Simulation terminated. Victory, Team Kane. The control room was silent except for the soft beeping of monitoring equipment and someone's mug of recaf slowly growing cold on a forgotten console. Vek'thara accessed the biometric data. Mira's vital signs during the engagement showed something fascinating and horrible. Her pain receptors had registered multiple impacts that should have been incapacitating. Her muscle tissue had torn in 3 places from overexertion. Her left wrist was fractured from blocking one of Qualthos's strikes. She had kept fighting through all of it. "Sir," his assistant instructor said, voice carefully neutral. "Her medical readouts show significant injury." "I see that." She did not stop. "I see that too. That is not normal." "No, it is not." He opened a channel to the training ground. "Kane, report to medical immediately. Your wrist is broken." A pause. "It feels fine, sir." "Your biometric sensors disagree." "That is an order." "Yes, sir." Vek'thara sat back in his chair, staring at screens full of data that contradicted everything he thought he knew. Humans were not supposed to fight through broken bones. We're not supposed to defeat Threxian combatants in melee. We're not supposed to move like physics was more of a suggestion than a law. His communicator buzzed. Message from GDF command, flagged priority. Finally. Someone up the chain had actually read his reports. He opened it eagerly, ready to discuss proper human combat classification, updated training protocols, maybe even species-wide capability reassessment. The message read, "Instructor Vek'thara, you are hereby ordered to cease submitting reports regarding human recruit capabilities. Your concerns have been noted and dismissed. Further reports on this subject will be considered insubordination. Focus on standard training objectives." He read it again, then a 3rd time, just to make sure the words had not somehow rearranged themselves into something less stupid. They had not. Vek'thara stood slowly, his scales flushing through colors that indicated emotions he did not have names for, walked to the window overlooking the training ground, where Mira was explaining to the medical team that yes, her wrist was broken, but could they please hurry because she had afternoon drills and did not want to be late. Command did not want to know, did not want to believe, did not want to face the possibility that they had completely, catastrophically misunderstood an entire species that was now officially part of the Galactic Defense Force. Fine. He could not change official policy, could not force command to update their files or revise their threat assessments, could not make the bureaucrats understand what he saw every day in this training facility. But he could train Mira Kane, could prepare her for whatever waited beyond these walls, could make absolutely certain that when the galaxy finally realized what humans were actually capable of, there would be at least one ready to show them. He returned to his console and opened a new file, marked personal, encrypted, off the official record, human combat capabilities, actual assessment, he titled it. Then started documenting everything command refused to hear. Somewhere out in the galaxy, people were making plans based on bad data, drawing strategies that assumed humans were weak, fragile, negligible. They were going to learn better, eventually. Vek'thara just hoped they learned before it cost lives. or before Mira Kane had to teach them personally, which would probably be messier but significantly more educational. Either way, his job had definitely gotten more interesting, even if it came with the creeping certainty that he was training something the rest of the galaxy was not remotely prepared for. And honestly, after 200 years of boredom, he was okay with that.